do you think?
Absolutely. You know, I've heard you speak of the divine field quite a bit, and there's no doubt with the beings that I've dealt with that there's a divine field that they're working through. You know what I mean? There's definitely a higher vibration. It was just kind of made the retention of memory from the encounters themselves kind of difficult. I can remember things, but they were just flashes and rather fragmented, you know, due to the vibration that those beings are operating on. So I think that when dealing with the divine field, the higher beings are using that. And what kind of worries me a little bit is I'm seeing some things in the media emphasize so much negative abductions, ME-Lab, and I'm not saying those things don't exist. I know a lot of people experience that, but you've also got people like me that have positive experiences. We don't get heard that much. So I'm glad to be here and kind of let that come out a little bit and see some of the positive aspects of contact that are helping to further our species and our planet, I believe.
What do you think that the non-humans that you've interacted with, what do they do that is a different frequency than our matter frequency? And the confusion is, if we're in a universe where the quarks and the subatomic particles are the same from one end of the, let's say, the Milky Way galaxy to another, or the universe, would the very fact that you've experienced different frequencies mean that the intelligence that has interacted with you is not even from inside this particular universe?
You know, I have to agree with that. The first entity that approached me, one actually gave me a name, which is unusual, Xandar. That's when I was a kid. And when I actually saw him on this ship, and I realized that this wasn't the same kid that was coming to play with me, but I didn't perceive him right. He had a white uniform, very advanced, felt like a scientist. But immediately what I'm shooting him is pictures of different creatures and different areas of space. Are you from the Pleiades? Are you from Sirius or any of these places? And he tells me, no, you need to go 900 million light years out and start looking there. But since you don't know what that means, focus on the third planet after Pluto. And I'm hitting him back. Are you lying to me? Because there's no planets outside of Pluto. At that time there wasn't. They'd not found trans-Neptunian objects now. Now that there are like 4 or 5 of them out there that are huge. So he said that base was a jumping off place for this solar system because they have a problem dealing with the density here. They can get trapped here. So I think I know what that means more now.
And you know, you were right. It's Michael Brown. He is the planet hunter out in the Kuiper Belt and beyond. And they've got that big gravitational anomaly out there. He thinks it might be a brown dwarf, which would mean that we would have been in a binary star system, and that sun died. Well, what if it's the planet that has been alluded to you by the non-humans you've dealt with, and they know something about this huge gravitational mass? And as far as I know, because I keep up with him, they still have not found the object, even though they've got all of these gravitational perturbations.
Gravitational perturbance, that's a big one, isn't it? A big one. And so, do you think that might be like what they call Nibiru or something like that?
Well, see, people bring that up from the Anunnaki, and I think we're all fighting that for 2,000, 5,000 years, the general human population has been told that that was all mythology. And so we're at this kind of stumbling block where we've got to break down all of the old archaeological tenets. And we've got to say the Anunnaki were really 12, 14 foot high life forms, and they ran this planet, and they ran it big time for a while. And the fact that somebody else came along and said, no, they're just myths, we're now rediscovering, and that may be why Nibiru has always seemed mythological. But maybe it is the big gravitational mass out there that they still haven't been able to see.
I did a video recently. Bear with me on this, all right? I like reading. One book, the Urantia book. I've got some issues with that book, but there's some factual information there that's very worthy. In there's a section called Adam and Eve. And when they describe Adam and Eve, they describe them as biological uplifters from a place called Edentia. And Edentia is supposed to be around our galactic center. And they're always dispersed in two. And they do a bunch of training before they take on the sovereign of a planet. Now, when I look at the Sumerian text and look at Enki and his wife, I swear that they're going through was uplifting training. And several, like when there's one where Enki's got a couple of them where he's got the waterfall coming off of him, and inside of that are these fish. I've heard a lot of different explanations. I think the fish is him being the god of sperm. And even at the end of the Uranta, they say that when they fell, that there was like so many hundreds of women brought to him for impregnation. And there's a Sumerian picture where you've got actually Enki sitting in a chair and somebody bringing him what was a woman in their head. These people were giants in his hand.
That's right.
And then also behind him is an individual who looks like he's bending down on these huge test tubes. You can look that up for yourself.
The test tubes in My Glimpses of Other Reality, Volume 2, but they're the big ones for clones.
Yes. So going back to the resurrection technology, right?
Yes.
You know that I love hearing you talk about that because I've experienced some technology on board craft that didn't make sense at first. One of them was a device that was there was 3 crystals that were they were huge, about the size of basketball goals, about 9-10 feet tall, and about 3 feet wide. And each one of them had a bioluminescence from the inside. All the crystals I've seen them using always have a bioluminescence or chemical luminescence inside. And when they look like they're wrapped in, well, look to me like copper. And they're in this container, and then they start spinning. And when they start spinning, they create this deep basal hum that to me sounds like what the Doggone tribe, the elder swings a bull roar. Woo, 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 woo. It sounded like that. And my friend Xandar is floating by the screen over here tells me that sound that you're hearing just isn't used for, this can power small planetoids. It's also used to heal human flesh. That's what he said telepathically. And that kind of blew me away, so I don't know how much that goes over into the resurrection technology, but I think it's all connected in a way.
And more and more. I did 2 long interviews with Roger Penrose and Stuart Hemlock. And both of them are, I'm going to say, orbiting around that frequencies that you could put the human brain in, let's say, a specific terahertz frequency at a very specific number, cycle, and literally reset your DNA. Like, if there was prostate cancer or a break, it'll all be reset, which would then be like a restoration of health. It's not rebirth. It would be resetting any of the problems in the DNA and the RNA. Something fundamentally makes sense to me about that we are dealing with intelligences that have been able to do that. That's why they would have endlessly long lives, because they can keep resetting. And what we've got, we're dealing with telomeres that continue to shorten. But in that, knowing that we've got the telomeres, all you would need, and this is what they were talking about, if you could get the magic frequency that would either block the telomeres from getting short, you'd never age.
Kind of like Highlander.
I mean, this is not over the top anymore. These are major minds who are talking about that what we need to do is find the frequencies that reset RNA, DNA.
I got one for you. Okay, so my third, what I call adult onset experiences. I was actually on a trampoline with the woman I was dating at the time, and we see this cloud come over, and then I'm seeing these beings and things like that in my mind, but we're back, and there's 4 hours missing. So it was another missing time. I had to go get a regression. I do advise that for people because the fragments I could remember were not accurate. They were accurate, but not enough. So what I've got is these beings of one of the few that gave me a name. They said they're Andromeda Council members. And there's one of them named Mana that's taller. It looks like it has a reverse brain. amphibious of some type, and there's another one sitting there, but then there are these little blue guys. And when I say little, Linda, they were like, I say 2 feet tall is pushing it. And when I walk into this room, there's a bed there, and the bed looks like these quartz crystal, rubies, and diamonds all fused together, and it was very poignant. And they're telepathically asking me to lay down on the bed. And I said, no, it's gonna hurt. And they said, no, it won't. So they got me to do it. Okay, I'm laying down on this bed, and a light starts going back and forth. And to the point where I was like, are you guys copying me? But the blue guys around me, it's about 3 or 4 of them around me, they've all got, first they got on these blue suits with a white racing stripe on the bottom and top. And they've got these devices, okay? It looks like a rod with a crystal on it, with what looks like fiber optics to me coming out of it. It's moving, it's alive. And they're all over me, and they're moving these things. They're not touching me with it, but these things are moving. I was like, well, whatever it is, that's alive. I said, you guys copying me? What the heck are you doing? And they say, no, we're upgrading the light quanta of your DNA. Because light quanta, because you don't believe in yourself. And we find that very painful. That was before, of course, years before I started speaking out or anything like this. You know, but to me, I was trying to figure out like what was the devices they had. And I know that they were communicating that the fiber optics were connected to the racing stripes and also allowed them to interface with the ship itself. So,
wow.
I think that goes with self-activating too, because part of their DNA is mixed into the compound.
Yes, I agree completely with that. And that is that the whole ship, the beings, everything is connected some way. In Germany, 20 years ago, they were able to show that photon energy could be released by separating in mitosis, when a chromosome was separating. And I think that it was also that in DNA itself, that there were emissions of photons, and they recorded it. What do you think would be the reason why DNA and mitosis would release photons?
Wow. You know, it almost takes me into something like a Doctor Who concept of regeneration. He just regenerates himself over and over again. I think maybe something similar to that, and it could be connected to the telomeres you're talking about. The telomeres are kind of like shoestring laces, right? And then they get kind of stripped like shoestrings do.
They get short. The shorter they get, the older we get.
Yeah. And maybe it's them showing us some things and harnessing that. Because actually the photon coming out of the DNA is fascinating. It goes a little beyond me, but that's fascinating.
I think so too. And ultimately, did you ever read Bones, the Implicate Order? There is a sentence in there that I've never forgotten. All mass is frozen light. And I've had experiences in my own life where something wanted me to see that if you lifted up what we would say was the surface around us, it would all be pulsing white, bright light with orchid sparks. And ever since I have seen that, it is the feeling that it's almost like we are in a game. And the game is to interact with matter. But that the truth of it is that the matter is an illusion of the sparking light.
Yeah.
And if that is the big game of it all, it's physicist Tom Campbell. He worked in Army Intel. He worked with Robert Monroe. And he is the guy who says now, this universe was constructed to be an entropy reduction trainer for souls. So any of us in here are getting some kind of a new university degree. And when we come out of here, where do you think, of all of the places that they've shown you in one way or another, do you think that this universe is like a higher degree, and that we end up then in a completely different, not like this universe at all.
You know, I gotta say, and I don't know how much of it goes universal, but I feel that I've gotten heat for this, but I feel like kind of this is a prison planet, and I think we can achieve more than that. That's what this is happening right now, the evolution that's going on. But this is kind of a prison planet where, in this solar system, especially, you have a lot of souls that are caught in the reincarnation cycle without being born with soul life memories, which I think is an issue. So perhaps there is somewhere where you have an angelic faction that was sent, but also the criminogenic faction was sent, and everybody's wiped clean. And is that where we are now? And going into other universes, these beings, Linda, I drilled them telepathically for years, over 2 decades, over who are you, what is your names? And they never told me anything. So after I'm recovering from an injury and I'm walking one day, and they just blew me up. And when they come in, it like cuts everything else off. And they're giving me this name, the Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance. And then they're emphasizing the cooperative, and we go from the micro to the macro. The only thing I could say is I thought back like, are you guys kidding me? I can't tell people that. That's worse than the ashtar thing, you know? But,
And what did they say?
They said it was no joke. They didn't actually say it, but they sent me feelings that was no joke. I've never seen them be that serious before. You know, to a point of where I had asked them before if they were gray aliens, because that's why I couldn't physically see some of them. And they start flashing me different types of grays. And they said, no, but we get a kick out of that too. I don't know if they're meaning how much that is fake, and they're saying that's not your vibration. So I kind of get what they're saying now. And can I throw something else at you real quick?
Yeah.
When we're in the panel, you had mentioned an encounter you had with an individual that had darker skin that was kind of ripply. You know, you did, I actually did a video of this. You had a video you put up on Earth Files a few weeks ago that was talking about Albert Bender and the 3 UFOs, I think it's called. I read that
The 3 men.
The 3 men.
And the 3 men were men in black. Mm-hmm. And they actually could, they asked him for a penny. And he took a coin, and one of the beings, the men in black, put it in the center. And then Albert Bender said, it began to glow, and it disappeared. And they said they were trying to communicate to him that they really were not from this frequency, this dimension, this universe. They were from another. And this seems to me to be one of the things that is repeated and repeated. That even this vast seeming 13.8 billion light year universe is only one of maybe an infinite number. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hammerhoff, they are convinced. I think Penrose said, I disagree with the singularity. He said, Penrose told me, he said, I disagree with the singularity idea. That all of this came from this atom, this microscopic thing. He said that he thinks that eternity, infinity, is that there have been the breathing in and the breathing out of universes with no beginning and no end. That's not comprehensible, but that's what he said. And therefore, from his point of view, entropy and light, collapse and expansion, they are like breathing in and out. And that our universe is one breath. And now we are at what? They expected that they would have hard evidence that it was dying down. Now they have confusing evidence that it's accelerating, and that dark energy and dark matter are in conflict, and that there is an expansion that they don't understand. Has any of the intelligences you've dealt with addressed this question of what kind of universe are we in?
Well, when I asked, as I mentioned earlier, when I asked Xandar exactly where he was from, he said go 900 million light years out. And I mean, that blew me away. He kept saying I wouldn't understand. And at first I didn't, I'll give him that. But when I start actually investigating those areas of space, I come and start resonating with a place called Abell 2265. And they're way out there, like very close to, they think, whatever the Big Bang was. And some of those galaxies are colliding and almost not in existence anymore. So we've got entities coming from that far out, coming here to a part of where they're just thought forms, I think, until they get into the solar system or atmosphere and start taking on physical forms, I believe. So that, and when they say they're interdimensional, that part of the name, I think that's got a big deal to do with it, that how many of these entities are coming from different frequencies and different dimensions, not the universe we're familiar with. So I tend to agree. I think bubble theory is pretty accurate maybe, and there's so many different universes, especially if you've got a higher type of creative soul that is capable of creating universes themselves. And I think that may have been what happened with the first, what they call the Big Bang, I think was an immersion of souls. That's what I've seen. And at the first wave, this comes in waves, like what I hear people talking about now, but this was different. The first waves of soul were so close to the Creator that they can create their own universes. You know, and then you've got the second wave going back. But the first, how many souls were on the first wave? Does it have to do with how many universes we're dealing with? Just a thought.
Yes, and would all consciousness have to have a soul? And are there a finite number of souls? And if so, what would a finite number of souls do to an ever-expanding universe?
Yeah. It's a good question. You know, I wonder how much of that has to do with, like, the factor of annihilation. You know what I mean? With everything expanding like it is and entropy gaining like it is. We talked about that a lot. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
What is the one thing that haunts you the most that has been communicated to you by your experiences? That haunts you?
Well, when I asked them, I wanted to know the future. And I keep trying to telepathically tell them, what about the future? And they'll never answer. But they showed me the past. And they showed me the Earth going around the sun, a portion of it, and it looks like almost an ash. It looks horrible, but it's still spherical. And they said, that will never happen again. We won't allow that to happen.
That will never happen again.
Yeah, so it's already happened, I think. And I mean, it takes us, how old is this planet actually? A billion years or so?
4.6. 4.6 billion.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
But where in the past do we know of anything in which the Earth would have been burned? When? I don't know of a time.
Yeah, it would have to go back even before what we call biblical times. So I think we're dealing with a cycle before. And you know, there are beings, some of the giants you talked about. I found out that some of them were melanin dominant and they came from triangular galaxy that's actually colliding with the Andromedan galaxy. And a lot of these beings come from, especially the ones we see that are 14 feet tall and sort of more ethnic looking. That's when I found out that they were from triangular. So
what do they want?
I think that they were busy being worshipped by humans here. And I think that happened again in the second cycle we're familiar with in biblical times. These beings come here and they start getting worshipped by the population. But nonetheless, we were still a type 1 civilization of some type. And I think Sasquatch is an example of that. I heard people talking about the structures they make. And I've heard some theories that the structures they make are almost savant. So that takes us into another level.
Savant.
Savant, yes.
Yes, that they know how to build things that you would not think that a Sasquatch could, but I agree with that. And they are associated with people seeing them going up and down in those same beams of light of mutilated animals, the transport up and down in craft. And there have been many abductees who have said, I ended up in a room and here was a Bigfoot sitting across. So would it be that the Sasquatch would fit into the category of something that non-humans made to be tough in the atmosphere of a highly oxygenated atmosphere? And that they would end up perhaps having been, I don't know, servants, but carrying out work for, let's say, tall blondes, reptilians, grays. So they would be an interspecies to do physical work on Earth for beings that don't want to do work here at all.
You know, at the SETI Ranch, I literally got harassed by Sasquatch. Seriously, you know. Something I met a gentleman out there by the name of Tom Powell, and he's a Bigfoot researcher, and we got to talking a lot for hours. And something he had a gentleman with him that I think maybe it was Ray Crow. I'm not sure before he passed, but this gentleman, Tom, used him to telepathically communicate with the Sasquatch. And then he started telling me about some tribe near Oregon there that they went to, where there's an alpha male, a female, and a daughter seen all the time on the reservation property. And that they weren't seeing, they're only seeing the daughter and the mother for a long time. So Ray, or whoever it is, went to a certain rock or somewhere. It takes him, I guess, a long time to communicate with him. And he got in contact with the woman, and he asked, so where's your husband at? Because he's supposed to be an alpha male, about 10 feet tall plus. So they wanted to see him. And she said, oh, he's gone. They took him.
Who said that?
The green ones. The green ones took him, and we don't like them very much because they put us to work. And then I look at Tom. I said, well, who's the green ones? And he looks at me. He says, my friend David Pauletti's. He would never admit to this publicly, but he said those are the green the reptilians, and that's who's working with them, and that they don't like. And I started thinking, who would be physically strong enough to control a Sasquatch physically? It would have to be a reptile of some type. Food for thought, if nothing else. You know what I mean?
Right. That is fascinating, because the reptilians have clearly played a long history. Why were Adam and Eve, whether it's metaphorical or literal, taught by reptiles? Because that's the snake in the Garden of Eden. Has that ever come up for you?
You know, I've never seen reptilians yet, enough to make me somewhat doubt what the validity of them was, but I've talked enough to real experiencers now, I know it's true, and I've seen so much information. So from personally, I don't have any experiences with the reptilians, so I'm not an expert on that.
If you were going to sum up right now what you think if you've had interactions for a long time, if you've had interactions for a long time with other beings, what is it that they want from you?
I think a big thing is getting me to remember my soul life memories. I think that goes for a lot of us that have the contact experience. Not just our soul life memories from this lifetime, but all the way back. Because some of us may have been places like Abel 2265, and we don't have a conscious memory of it. So I think they're trying to bring us back into sync with our soul life memories and to being fully awake cognitively. That's what I feel like they're doing. And the second thing is, these beings are really interested in the earth, and they're really trying to work with the earth. You know, the first ship I saw an adult experience, at first it looked like kind of like, for better of a word, a Pleiadian craft. And I'm watching this thing, I'm out of the car at this point, I'm watching it, and it starts kind of shimmering, and it transforms into what looks like these crystal balls with a rod, like a molecule almost, and it's going through the air, and I can see it emitting light, but it's emitting it to the earth, not anybody on the ground. And that's what I knew. I was like, okay, whatever this is they're doing is connected to the earth, big time. In fact, that experience really resonated with me and stuck in my mind for so long, because I couldn't find any frame of reference for seeing a craft do that. I mean, first it's metal, then all of a sudden it almost looks like the thing from the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve when he came to Earth. That ship looked like a ball with spikes coming off from stalagmites. It's connected in that way, and the way it's moving in the Earth is kind of the rotation. So that's what I would say, the Earth and us remembering who I was.
Was
who
it
we are.
triangular?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I actually got a couple of sketches of this. And, you know, I drove myself crazy trying to figure out what the heck I saw. And it wasn't Ezekiel's wheel. But when I went through J.J. Hertog's book, and I had it for years, The Keys of Enoch, midways through he talks about tri-pyramidal and bipyramidal Merkabahs, and he even shows them transforming on that page. That's what I saw. I mean, it looked more crystalline after it transformed, but at first it was very similar to that as far as metamorphic process. It was quite similar. So I was excited to see the tri-pyramidal Merkabahs, is what he called it.
What do you think your assignment is with the beings that you have interacted with?
I think, you know, I've dealt with that a lot. And I never in a million years thought I'd be speaking out about this, and I can't prove anything. I can tell my testimony, but I can't prove anything. But I think it's to help with the consciousness and the uplifting of our consciousness right now. It's important because I don't want to be negative, but I think we're in big trouble here.
I do too.
Yeah.
Big trouble.
And a lot of this is just trying to bring this through and getting people that can communicate. Because I know for them, they're so non-corporeal compared to us, even the ones that are physical, you know, that I think they have to have representatives down here in this density to actually try to promote their message. That's what I believe.